there, St. John Nicholas, with my friendly bow, the feast of reason and the flow of soul.
Hello, and welcome to Feast of Reasons. Today we're going to dive into a question we look at a lot, which is why good ideas don't spread even when they work. And we're going to do this in the framework of dyslexia and what it reveals about how knowledge evolves. We have a great guest today, Russell Van Brocklen, who has worked with hundreds of students, helped them with dyslexia. He spent 10 years educating dyslexic students. He's a reviewer at the International Dyslexia Conference, and he has developed a method that is really, really interesting that we're going to dive into and see how this has changed the face of dyslexia, how we look at it as a society, and how we treat it. Russell, welcome to Feast of Reason.
Thanks for having me.
So I guess where I'd like to start, just to sort of set the groundwork here, is maybe talk a little bit about how people used to think about dyslexia. What did they believe it was? What did they tell kids who had it about themselves? And what did treatment look like before things like structured literacy?
Well, would you believe treatment hasn't really changed much since the 1950s? Okay. So the best thing I can do is, first of all, just so we know what dyslexia is, and you're all about science, so let's go to the science. This is the top book in my field. It's called Overcoming Dyslexia by Dr. Shelley Sawich from Yale. That's dyslexia.
Okay.
And you see how the back part of your brain has this massive neural activity? See how the back part of my brain has almost nothing? Now, do you see how the front part of my brain's about 2.5 times overactive?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're talking about how do we fix this, number one, if you have any sense whatsoever as a school district, you would just pick up the phone and call Yale. Just Google Yale dyslexia, it'll come up, and you say, how do we test for dyslexia in kindergarten? And they'll tell you. And it costs about $40-$50 a kid. The teacher can do it. Once you find out the kid's dyslexic, then you're like, how do we solve this? And they will tell you. And they have all these federally funded $1 million a program. They're all over the place. Pick what you want. What your job is, by the end of 3rd grade, in every state, you take a reading test. If you pass it at the end of 3rd grade, you're going to be okay, generally, statistically. If you fail, it's a 911 emergency. All right, just big problem, because K through 3 we learn to read, 4th and above we read to learn. So then you can go to a school like the Windward School in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It has a 98% success rate over decades. They take students in, keep them for 4 to 5 years, and send them back as educated as any best private school in the world.
How is success defined? You say 98%.
No, success is fine. They are thoroughly as prepared as like Eton, Groton. They are as prepared as any of these top schools. Takes 4 to 5 years at $75,000 a year, and the student to teacher ratio is 4 to 1 or 5 to 1. Nobody can afford this. So the other kids that have failed, what we have tried to fix that in New York State, because that's exactly what happened to the head of our Judiciary Committee. His name is Senator Brad Hoylman-Segal. He's a Harvard grad, Rhodes Scholar from Oxford, and that happened to his daughter. He spent $8,000 on her neuropsych, and now she's in a private school like $65,000 a year. His family can't support it. So they got together with 49 of the top people in the state to study, using conventional methods, how do we solve this problem? And they submitted a report, and they want another 18,000 teachers, which we can't afford, and we spend more on education than anybody per student. So after 4th grade, the idea is this is just not solvable outside, $500,000 a kid, which we don't have, and there's not enough schools. So when you're looking at solving that, I actually solved it initially. My first step was, let's take a look at a bunch of super motivated and super intelligent high school juniors and seniors. All right. And the goal was, most of these kids, what we found is they were reading and writing it. And this was actually funded by the New York State Senate. These kids were reading and writing at the 7th or 8th grade level. Now, just understand, they're all super intelligent, massively motivated. So when I looked at solving this, because they just did horrible in college, the idea was, Why don't we bring the writing skills up to entering graduate students just in one shot? Let's do 7, 8 grade levels in a year, and let's do this cheap. Does that sound probably a bit on the impossible side?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds
And
wonderful if you can pull it off.
well, not only that, but my competition takes 2 full years to train a teacher after a bachelor's degree, and it costs $11,000, and that's from a non-for-profit. My system took less than 5 hours to learn. All right. So what we did is we decided to give them the graduate records exam analytical writing assessment. So when we did this in a public school, we gave the kids the how do you think they did with middle school writing skills on a test for students going into grad school
This is
for
post
writing?
your program?
No, this is before. This is the pretest.
Before,
How do you think
before.
they did?
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
not well, I would assume.
Well, generally the 0 percentile was the most prevalent.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
So
That
then
bad.
one class period a day for the school year, they increased to the 30th to 70th percentile of entering grad students.
Hmm.
Cost less than $900 a kid. They all went on to college. They all graduated with GPAs of 2.5 to 3.6. This was the OOs. My biggest competition was Landmark College. It was a 2-year transfer college at the time. Totally changed in 2013 when they had a top professor came over and just rechanged everything about it. But back then, according to the New York Times, we were 3x as successful as they were for less than 1% of the cost, for less than 1/25th of the effort.
Wow. So
And
there,
that's
what
yeah,
are the
that
obstacles
was my
to
first
mass
one.
adoption? I mean, what are the obstacles to mass adoption? It sounds like it works incredibly well.
Oh,
What's keeping this from being more widely adopted?
well, just so you know, that was 20 years ago. So
Okay.
when I went down to present this in New York City, I got 2 reactions. The first reactions were from senior professors. They said 2 of your students went from essentially the 0 percentile to the 70th percentile of entering grad students. We don't care. We want the craft of research. And I was like, what the heck's the craft of research? It's a book that was published by the University of Chicago in 1995 to teach PhD students to do their doctoral dissertations. It's about context, getting everybody on the same page. Most importantly, coming up with a problem statement that you can do that actually needs to get solved, and then a solution where the reader's going to learn something significant. They say if you can't do that, don't write the paper, which pretty much wipes out almost everything at the undergrad and master's level in the United States. And they wanted me to teach this to high school dyslexics.
Mm.
That was their marching orders. And then the gen ed teacher said, okay, does this work for, it works for the super kids at the end of high school. Does it work for normal kids? I said, absolutely not. They said, come back when it does. So I came back 8 years later. So the shift was what the biggest issue that we found and what they subsequently found in New York State with is we have to make this radically faster, radically cheaper, and so parents can do this. So the biggest
Mm.
issue that you're running to in dyslexia is, remember I told you about that 3rd grade test?
Yeah.
How do we get these kids from writing a bunch of apparently randomly placed misspelled words and writing a decent 3-reason sentence? That was the first task that I had to overcome.
Hmm.
So in your life, have you ever met a dyslexic student in elementary or middle school that was writing apparently randomly placed misspelled words?
No, not to my knowledge. I did have some friends growing up, and actually, I have more
Mhm.
children of friends who have dyslexia, but I don't remember them being that. You know, there might be backwards letters in a birthday card or something, but nothing that was random and crazy.
Okay. So here is how we go about fixing this. So let's again go to the science. It's really simple. You look at the back part of the dyslexic brain. I mean, your
Hmm.
brain's going crazy. There's nothing going on here, but we have 2.5 times the neural activity up here. So let's use it. So according to Yale, that's word analysis followed by articulation. So what I'd like to do is to show your audience how to overcome the biggest problem with dyslexia. This would take literally my competition weeks to learn, if not months, and I can show you how to do it in about 10 minutes. And if you answer the questions exactly, I give these questions to 7-year-olds. They're not trick questions. This will work. If not, you're going to get profoundly confused and then have an epiphany on what dyslexia really is.
Do you have this test online? Is this something that's on your or website
Oh
we could
no,
direct people to?
I'm just gonna I don't do tips. I'm gonna show you literally in about 10 minutes how to train a dyslexic kid to not do randomly placed misspelled words, to actually do it properly. Something that
Yeah,
the
I'm not.
teachers have no idea how to do. Are you
Oh, I
ready?
get it. I'm just not sure. My audience isn't necessarily parents of dyslexic kids or people with dyslexia. It's the we're looking at this more broadly in terms of how
Mhm.
the science has changed and the technology has changed. So walking through it, spending 10 minutes walking through a test, I don't think was makes sense for the podcast. But
Okay.
we should direct people to something that if they're interested, we can definitely put that a link in the comments.
So let me do a more advanced version. And this is something that I do with a lot of gen ed students. All right. One of the biggest issues that we're running into, have you noticed the utter lack of clear thinking and the ability to write advanced body paragraphs?
In all students,
In all
you mean?
students
In
at
all
all
students?
levels.
Sure, of
I am
course.
there are employers that tell me that they have a lot of college grads, even master's levels, and they can't write clear advanced body paragraphs. They
Yeah,
don't know
no,
how to
sure.
come up with an idea. Because one of the biggest issues that I'm getting from employers is very simple. It used to be back when, we were in high school, that you had the big broadcast mediums. You could just send out a very broad message. Now it has to be extremely laser focused, not only in business and communications, but in almost everything. And they don't know how to do that. So I have an advanced version that we use for that. It's for middle, high school, college, grad students, and professionals. Would that be more of interest to you?
Well, I think that you're talking about something now more broadly. It's not just dyslexic. I mean, this is sort of in the realm of. I mean, the villain that everybody points to in this is social media, right? Jonathan Haidt's anxious generation,
Mhm.
the overstimulation of digital devices, and all of the pressures and social pressures from social media. The lack of there's lots of other things to point at education. So you're talking about attacking that whole problem.
Yes, yes. So let me give you an example of how far we go. This is one of the most advanced students we're working with now. His name is Grayson. He's not dyslexic in the least. He's just a 99th percentile person in math and science. Grayson wants to get his PhD, work for NASA to terraform Mars. So, in order to do that, we have to get him published in a peer reviewed journal. In order to do that, we have to show him how to do advanced body paragraphs, come up with a unique problem statement and a solution, and get it past a book review, a
Hmm.
desk review, and actually get it rejected by a senior reviewer. At which point, on another podcast, I met a gentleman who's on the board of directors of one of the top 10 technical universities in the United States. At which point, we can use him to connect Grayson to a professor. He goes in. I got past desk review. I got rejected for this laundry list of stuff. I want to work with you to get this published so he can get his dream job, which will have a profound effect on the professor because Grayson's on the young side. How old do you think he is?
Don't know. 16.
Grayson's 10.
10. Okay, and he already wants to be
Okay.
terraform Mars.
Yes. Well, and that's what we're going over. So that entire process. How do we start off that process? According to the craft of research, we start off with context. So
Hmm.
I'd like to show you an advanced form of that because this is what we have to bring all our students through if they want. Remember what I said, the senior professors want the craft of research. So I want to walk you through specifically the context and most importantly, the bottleneck that I found in knowledge creation is how to do the thesis statement. I'm not sorry, not the thesis statement, the problem statement. How to actually come up with something worth the time and effort and that will actually result in a unique solution.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So let's start off with the first one. The biggest issue that we need to now challenge ourselves is how do we get to something that's very specific and not be stuck with a broad brush. Okay. So with that, how I start off with anything that a dyslexic comes up with, you're probably going to find it looks like it's coming out of left field. Like this makes no sense. But then it very rapidly does. So I start off with a movie review. I need you to come up with a movie that meets three criteria. You think it's one of the best of all time, you know it intimately, and everybody's seen it. What's the name of that movie?
Me? There are lots of different criteria about movies, but my stock answer to that is the movie I enjoyed watching the most as I was watching it is My Big Fat Greek Wedding for lots of
Okay. Yes,
complex reasons.
and a lot of people saw that. So, the big fat Greek wedding. Now, here's the challenge for you. I need you to reduce that entire movie to a one-word universal theme that best represents it.
Oh, okay. One sentence or one word?
One word,
Culture.
culture. Okay. Now, if you were to do a proper movie review, you would ask, how did the main actors that you think are important deal with the universal theme of culture? How did the director do? How did the screenwriter do? You put all
Hmm.
that up, write
Hmm.
it up, and then people decide do they want to see it or not. If they want to see it, you've enhanced their experience because then they now know who to look for and what to look for. But you haven't ruined it by saying this happened, this happened, this happened, and this happened. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the problem with culture. It's big brush, very broad strokes. You can't focus it. So what's the next step? Then I go to Shakespeare because in the world of English language literature, Shakespeare is the absolute top in how to communicate it. So I want you to think briefly back to high school. You'd have look at any Shakespeare play. You'd have a hero. Hero wants to do something based on one or more universal themes. Then you'd have an ultimate villain who would try to stop the hero from accomplishing their goals, and that villain's a character, a character, a universal theme, something along those lines. They start to interact in Act One. They have that fight. It accelerates the conflict in Act Two greatly, resolves in Act Three. Sound familiar?
Yes, it doesn't cover all of his historical plays, but certainly the comedies and tragedies that are fiction. And I wouldn't say that Shakespeare is the pinnacle of communication. I mean, it's a very elite group of people who truly understand what all of
Oh,
what Shakespeare is talking about. But maybe you're just talking about high level plotting.
I'm just giving you a general belief that he was the top one in his general framework, which we're now going to move past because we now need to simplify that. So anytime I'm giving you a solution, I need you to understand where it's based, and people have different opinions on different levels which I'm bypassing, but that's generally one that people can understand. So we're moving now to a simplified version of that. And remember what our goal was. We now have to go about figuring out how to not only use this to come up with something very unique, but I'm also going to actually show you how to use this to teach the dyslexic to read.
Hmm.
Okay. And it's all come together. So then what we do is let's say we were taking the script of the big fat Greek wedding. All right. We are going to, you can use that at middle, high school, college, grad school, whatever. All right. What you would do if you were dyslexic is you would say, okay, who's the hero? What does the hero want to do? And we would tell the dyslexic to write out as many paragraphs as you can. Please note we're doing advanced body paragraphs. At this point, the kids, we taught them enough to actually write multiple paragraphs. So they write out as much as they can. For each sentence, you're going to take the most important word. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the most important words. Now, when we're coming to the point of how do we teach a dyslexic to read? And just so everybody again understands, this is 2 years of training and 4 to 5 years at a $75,000 a year private school, or you can follow this area. The first thing we do with dyslexics is you have to understand is during the intervention period, we focus on their speciality, their area of extreme interest and ability. Let me give you an example why. The most motivated kid I ever met, her name was Casey. Just so everybody knows, I never saw anything like this before Casey. I'll never see anything like this again. Casey was 10 years old when I met her at the end of fifth grade, reading at the second grade level. She turned 11 over the summer. She was interested in Theodore Roosevelt. So I assigned her this book, The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, all 900 pages. This is 10th grade, the first year college level. On her own, nobody told her to do this. I gave her a simple process. She went up to her room and shut the door for 3 hours a night for 6 months, most of the days during the summertime. By the end of that period, you could flip to this random page, random word, and she would tell you the dictionary definition. She jumped 8 grade levels in 6 months, and I worked with her for 15 minutes a week.
And it
All
was
right.
using that framework of picking out the big theme
Uh,
and then
a,
finding the
ver-
keywords that relate to it.
a version of it. But what I need to tell you is before we get back into that, I
Mm.
need you to understand at the gut level a system that if you don't follow this, this will not work for for dyslexics. The key thing was we were in her speciality. Why I'm telling you this is she was the most motivated person I've ever worked with. When we went from a book she loved to one she hated on her mother's instructions, she
Mm.
said her motivation dropped about 50%. Most kids that's down ADD, ADHD, or dyslexic outside the speciality, you're down 75 to 90%. So during the intervention period, you have to be in their speciality. Number two, if you ask a dyslexic in their speciality, do they have ideas flying around their head at light speed or with little to no organization? They will say yes. So we have to force the dyslexic brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Let me put that into English. If you were given this assignment, let's say Bill Gates is going to pay you 100 grand for a week to do this. What effect did Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech have on the American Civil Rights Movement of the 1960s? Could you just go to the library, start opening up books, and write a ninth grade level paper on that?
You asked me if I could?
Yeah, yeah. Could you do that?
Sure. I hope
Sure.
so. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
because,
maybe even 10th. Who knows?
well, right. But for a dyslexic, we can't do that. It's like
Got
grabbing
it.
fog.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you like big picture, eventually getting in the details. We're flying around with a lot of with just tremendous speed, but no organization. We have to flip that. We have to start at a very specific point and slowly go out. So what we would do is we would ask what personally compelled Martin Luther King to want to give his famous speech. Once we have that, we can then we can go find the answer. That answer will give us a question, which gives us an answer, which gives us a question, which gives us an answer. That forces our brain to organize itself by using writing as a measurable output. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
And then
in
third,
that sense, it's a measurable output for all of us, right? But um, it's a goal to try to get to how it works for people that aren't dyslexic, and that makes perfect sense, right? Fair
right.
enough.
If you're not just, if you're have a normal brain, you start off big picture, eventually get to the details. Dyslexic's the exact opposite. That's one of the key components. Then the last thing is we do word analysis followed by articulation, which I'm about to show you an advanced form of. Okay. So when we're looking at now that we have all the most important words, we now come to what I like to call a come to Jesus moment with my clients. I say, you're going to do this work in your speciality, or I can't help you and you go try something else. Most of them will do it. What we have to do is this is a critical point for you to understand about dyslexia. We're dealing with the front part of the brain.
Hmm.
It's 2.5 times overactive. According to Yale, this is word analysis followed by articulation. Nobody asked this question before me. How can you apply word analysis if you don't know exactly what the word means? Exactly. You can't. So what I do is I have the kids look up the word, each most important word on the Merriam-Webster's online dictionary. They can't copy and paste. They actually have to go to a real keyboard, type out the word, and then type out the definition that they chose.
Mm.
And they're going to keep doing that over the next 6 to 12 months until they've done this so many times, they now know what the word means permanently. I don't know if it's 5 times, 10 times, 15 times, whatever. When I did this with Casey, after we got done with this, I would ask her to thesaurus a word. That's what's what I call it. She went through 237 words in less than 10 minutes, knew what everyone meant, and said, this is the best one in my view because of this. And she could have debated that in college. Okay, that's how well we know it. And then when it comes time for their SAT or their ACT, they don't need to study hundreds of evolved words. They know them. They remember 70, 80% of the definition.
Hmm.
Okay, so then what they do is they type out the word, they type out the definition for each one, then they pick, this is my best universal thing. And then we run into the same problem we ran into your movie review with culture. It's too broad. How do we focus that? When we put it into the thesaurus, you can do 5 words, 10 synonyms, the whole level, multiple levels, whatever the teacher chooses. The student types out each word, types out the definition until eventually they know exactly what it is. So they've done it so many times. Then they're looking for the word that best matches what's in their head. Okay. Best matches there. That is not going to be perfect, but it's going to be much closer. Then we can laser focus and then decide who the ultimate villain is. Do you see how this is an advanced form of word analysis?
I do. I have a question though. Again, this is maybe just my own
Mhm.
ignorance about dyslexia. I guess I thought that I always imagined dyslexia as more like a visual problem, like you just can't see the
Mhm.
word in the right way. And what you're describing sounds more like there's actually neurological function that's going on that has to do with being able to absorb what the meaning of a word is, not so much not just being able to see it in the letters in the
Yeah,
proper
and
order.
yeah. How far did you go in your education?
A little bit of college.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you what typically. So again, let's just look at the science. This is generally the back part of the brain is generally kindergarten through high school, probably the first 2 years of college. The front part of the brain deals with is about 2.5 times overactive. That's grad school. All right. So when you see a dyslectic in grad school, we own it is so unfair. My second day of law school, I was called on. I didn't respond as the professor's as a student. I responded as his equal. Okay, we argued for 15 minutes. He had to finally give up because I couldn't beat him. He couldn't beat me. When it came time to me connect all this stuff, I was supposed to take years. I did in less than 2 weeks.
Hmm.
It is profoundly unfair. Do you ever watch this little show called Shark Tank?
I've seen an episode or two. Yeah.
Half the sharks are dyslectic.
Hmm.
We make up maybe 10% of the population. Okay. It is profoundly unfair when you're trying to be a knowledge creator. But I'd like to show you now how to actually be of use and to show you a writing technique that'll actually improve the writing of just about everybody on your show. So we have our hero, our universal theme, and our villain. Now that's word analysis. Now we have to do an advanced form of articulation. So we go because, three really good reasons. We will take each reason and turn it each one into a simple universal theme, and then we would take that universal theme and go to your script. Okay? We would go at the beginning of the script and find one quote that deals with that universal theme at the beginning of the script and one at the end. We will then take those two quotes and put them together. That's our data, and then we'd form our topic sentence. Now, have you ever noticed that going from your topic sentence to your data, it doesn't flow very well?
Well, I'm not sure I know what you mean exactly. I mean, are you saying
So you
that
have your
that you
I want you to imagine the script that you're talking about was beautifully written, okay? But when you typically there's a flow there. But when you typically have your topic sentence and then you move to your data, it tends not to flow very well.
well, that's certainly, especially the kind of writing I do. I mean, that's a skill I really worked hard to develop because I'm trying to write in an
Mhm.
accessible narrative style, but I tend to deal with things that are data heavy, like
Mhm.
sociological data, economic data, um, you know, polling data, of lots of, and so I that is difficult to do, but for me personally, it's something that I'm constantly trying to get better at.
Okay. So let's just take economic data. We got a lot of statistics. Okay. From that, we can go ahead and create a topic sentence. Have you noticed that when you're moving from your topic sentence to all that heavy technical data, the flow isn't as good as it usually could be?
Well, I think the problem in most of the writing like that I read, and the problem that I try to solve is that it's very difficult to know how far into the weeds to go, and it's
Hmm.
definitely there's the curse of knowledge. So when you have deep knowledge or deeper knowledge of a particular area, and you're trying to communicate to people, all of those things that you took all that time to learn are just super important to you, and you feel like you need to tell everybody everything, but then you end up overwhelming and coming up with something that kind of doesn't work anymore, that doesn't flow anymore. So that process of parsing out what are the key things that really support
Mhm.
that top line, the top line claim, and what you're really trying to communicate, and what are the things that don't, and using that as the guide to how you include them and talk about them is really important. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
No, no,
so that's hard. It's
you're
hard to
doing
do.
it. Yes, and so I just want to leave your audience, because remember, I have to teach this to 11-year-olds. All right. Once we have our data, as you deal with it, it's polling, it's economics, it's whatever, and then you form your topic sentence. From the craft of research, one of the key things that they teach that very few people outside of doctoral candidates know is applying a warrant to a body paragraph.
Mm.
Have you ever thought about doing that?
No, no, I can't say I have.
Uh, what you do is we have your topic sentence, we have your data, and then you connect the two by using a warrant, which is using a how and answering a how and why question.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
because I went and showed you how you use a universal theme, and then you have two quotes based on that, you can get by with one warrant. All right. Now, when we teach advanced courses, we go in a bit more detail, but that's essentially what that is. And I can tell you, if a professor sees a warrant, they automatically think it's a much more advanced, technically written paragraph,
Hmm.
to the point where I've had a seventh grader write a technically more evolved paragraph than his high school senior brother, who's in AP English, which
But
drove
how
his
how
brother
much
to
of this
endless
is
things.
how much of this is like a technical trick that impresses instructors, and how much of it is just clear communication and understanding, or is it really both things?
It is really both things. The again, I cannot overemphasize. Every time I've dealt with a university professor, and they've had a chance to look through the craft of research. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I want. And there is no high school that teaches this. It's too involved. And I start having to teach it to 11-year-olds. All right. So the idea of using a warrant to just get a better flow from your topic sentence to your data, it's
Hmm.
simply, what's the how question? What's the why question? How do we make it? It just smooths it out. All right. It's a trick that I've found two people with master's degree understood. Okay. And now that I told you how to use a warrant, if you don't use it, you will get arrested. That's a joke.
by
Okay.
the dyslexic police. Well, I think the no, I get it, and that sounds like it sounds like a useful tool as I'm thinking about it in terms of, if I'm writing something about the religious affiliations in the United States, and
Mhm.
so the how being, just basically how is this data acquired, and is it, is it valid, and the why being, which would be a really important one for that, is it, what does this really mean, is this telling us that people just aren't religious anymore, or is it telling us that religious beliefs are shifting, changing, right,
Mhm.
would be an example. So that would be, just off the top of my head, that's an example where I could see that
Yeah.
would be useful.
Yeah. It's
I
just,
feel like I do that kind of intuitively, and maybe without
yes.
actually doing the exercise, but
Yeah, when you're dealing at the level that you're playing at, because my first major in college was economics. All right. We had all of this heavy data stuff. And I can tell you, if you want to go to bed at night and you just can't sleep, pick up a random economic report, and that'll do it for you. It's so
My father
boring.
my father was an economics professor. I can and his books, which he wrote a number of them, are pretty good insomnia cures. You're quite right.
Yes,
Sorry, Dad.
exactly. So the simple idea of, with your data, then forming the topic sentence, but just so people can understand, what's the how, what's the why, and this is a very standard practice within the craft of research. All right, and again, I start teaching this to middle school kids typically.
Mhm.
So, but the next issue that I'm finding the bottleneck is, one of the biggest issues that we're getting with knowledge creation is how to use artificial intelligence.
I was going to ask.
Okay. Yes. So just so you know my background with that, the day in December of 2024, OpenAI came out with its pro model at $200 a month. I bought it that day. Literally, even though I'm severely dyslexic, I produce so much written product that I get out. I'm
Mhm.
literally more than 10x more effective. Like literally, I do more than 10 times the work of most people who are educated. Do it with no
This
AI.
is pre-large language model or post-large language model?
No, this is what this is what I'm able to do now,
I
this
see.
month. Okay. Because I spend a half an hour to an hour a day on AI because I have to keep up because my kids don't know how to do it. They're done. And what I found is the most important thing with serious AI learners is you have to know what good looks like. So right now, the economic stuff you do all the time. If I showed you an economics report made by some master student and you looked at it, you would instantly know if is this good? Is this not good? If it's not good, what do we need to do to fix it? You just know in your bones. You know it. Does that make sense?
Well, no, not to me. I mean, you're talking to the guy who thinks that we all have to be much more humble about the level of our own knowledge and recognize that knowledge is a shared resource. So
Mhm.
I am a skeptical of any kind of big broad claims, and for in the case of economics, it's even which is a soft science, right? Not a hard
Mhm.
science. The being skeptical about the data is it's very hard to really assess, and it's very hard to get really quality solid data, and it can be misinterpreted in so many ways that I think
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
just always skeptical.
I'm
But
not
knowing it in
looking
my
at.
bones, no, I know it in my bones is a anathema to me, because I think that it's to me this is a fundamental human frailty where we mix up the word, we say no when what we really mean is believe.
Okay. W- Okay. Let me switch it to something else in your career. Sound engineering. Okay.
Mhm.
The point of artificial intelligence, if you are going to use this at an advanced level, the fundamental thing that I found is you have to know what good looks like. You have to know when you see it, is this correct? Is this not correct? And if not, how do we fix it? If you can't do that, you can't be an advanced user of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, they're constantly telling you that they make mistakes, and critical stuff needs to be checked out.
Yes. And if you're somebody out of college and just you know how bad it is, this was a statistic I heard. The underemployment rate for recent college grads is 40%. What does that mean? From what I found it, the kids are getting jobs that they didn't need a university degree for. And a lot of it's because the work that I used to pay college kids to do or college graduates, I'm now zooming through so many times myself, and I have two assistants with advanced degrees. And anything that's just too cumbersome for me, I send to them and I look it over. So if you're one of the new kids coming out of school and you want to know what right looks like, do a deep research report, actually read it, and then use it as a template. I will use a deep research report for creating a sentence, for creating a paragraph if it's that important. If you keep reading it and understanding what it is and then making sure it's right and investigating it, it takes about 6 to 12 months in any given field to get a good sense of what the right looks like. Very few people are doing that. But when you're ultimately looking at when we apply the craft of research, what is a research problem that is important enough to actually solve that we have the resources to do it and whose solving this will actually provide enough economic value to be worth it? And I'm finding that to be the bottleneck. So one of the ways that I'm teaching my kids on how to learn how to do this, remember the highest form in academia is generally getting peer reviewed and getting the thing published. Okay. So when
Mhm.
we're looking at it, how do we find number one? I look at it from two sides. What's the hole that needs to get done? Well, the AI is really good at that. They can look through the journals and say, here's something that's important. I look on the other side of this, and I'll start doing this with kids at 10 to 12. We'll find out what their speciality is, their area of extreme interest and ability. And then I will custom create materials for them based on peer-reviewed articles. For Grayson, he's currently reading at the 11th grade level, and the context of the material is at the second-year college level. So what I do is I have them read through the document one time, then read through it a second time, circling things that they find confusing, read through it a third time and trying to answer those questions, try to solve it themselves. What is left, I then go and create the next custom document with. And as we do this, and this takes usually probably about a year or two, as they go through that, eventually I'm trying to push them towards a hole that needs to get filled where they can ask a question that now needs to be answered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Give me an
Now,
example.
okay.
What
Well,
was
eventually,
Grayson's question?
well, this is what we're trying to do with Grayson. When was the last time you think that there's been a composite of all the articles in that field written up?
Which field now? Remind me.
How to terraform Mars.
Oh, how to from Mars.
They
I
have not done
I
in the
have no
last
idea.
14
Not
years.
counting science fiction.
Right. But what they have not done is they haven't looked and said, here's all the major articles out here. This is the overview. That hasn't been done in 14 years.
Mm.
So that's where we're moving Grayson towards.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other students, I have another student. His name is Albert. He's not dyslexic in the least. He's just a super bright 12-year-old who's going to be going on. He's going to be an engineering science kid. He's STEM. All right. He's interested in hawks that how they attack. He's currently his materials at the 11th grade level. Are we going to do peer reviewed with him? No. We're going to bring him to the point of a college senior thesis. So in other words, at that point, not a university professor, but somebody who's very knowledgeable in hawks and how they are attacking birds, hunting birds, that they would learn something substantive. So we're kind of going through that same process with him. We're just doing it at a much lower level. And
It sounds
for most, yeah.
what you're describing sounds like they're creating a meta study, looking at all of the material. At least it's
Mhm.
certainly the case of the terraforming Mars. Just that the meta study hadn't been done. It's looked like here's all of the stuff that's been done, and then looking for how things fit together and what things don't work,
Mhm.
and maybe resolving conflicts between them. I mean, that's essentially the basic
Yes.
scientific function of a meta study, right?
Yes. But the thing is that hasn't been done in 14 years.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why so when we do that with Grayson and when we submit the article, the goal is to get it past desk review, which means if you don't do one little thing, they reject it. You get past that, then it goes to a reviewer and it will come back with a laundry list of stuff. At that point, we turn him over to a senior professor. And that I can guarantee you that senior professor will be extremely interested in working with him because this is the stuff they have trouble doing with their grad students. I assume at that point, Grayson will be around 14 or 15 years old.
Wow. Okay. And so, and how you'll continue to work with him? What a few hours a week between
Oh,
between
no,
now and then? You
I
think?
don't
Or
work with him at all. I teach his father to teach him.
I see. So it's all done. The actual work's done by the parents, and you're just coaching essentially,
Right.
coaching the
What
parents.
we've found out is the problem with unless if you're ultra wealthy, you can't afford to pay a tutor what they actually need to make for a living wage.
Yeah.
All right. And so you show the parents what to do. They work on it at their time. And then, they know exactly what's going on. And here's the other thing when the kids feel like, like acting like a kid, which Grayson does every once in a while, he'll actually act like a 10-year-old. Parents have a way of motivating their kids the way nobody else can.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right.
Well, when we're
So,
lucky. Yeah.
oh no, there's a truly evil way. I have the kids in the basic process I was talking about. I have them come up with one thing they really dislike, the most, a chore. And then if they don't do the work, they go and the parents force them to do that chore until they change their minds. And then they videotape it, and I find everybody finds it hilariously amusing.
Yeah. I'll bet. Yeah. That's it. So it sounds like there's a large institutional framework that has sort of been built about how to treat dyslexia, and there are established players in there who are getting $75,000 a year at their schools. And so how are you going about to change the institutional framework for teaching dyslexia. You've got an idea that seems to be working. You've got a body of work
Hmm.
now, and decade more of evidence of this success. And but you're still up against these large institutional forces. How do you go about changing that? How do you go by becoming this method becoming the new institution, or at least incorporated into the institutional framework?
Well, the first thing, I'm starting off in New York State, and we just had that big task force.
Hmm.
One of the people I met there, her name is Evelyn Whitebay. She was one of the three teachers on the dyslexia task force. So she's uh, just a wizard at teaching dyslexics. We're writing a book called If You Write, You Can Read, which will come out in the next couple of months. It's going under its last edits. And in there, we show parents how exactly to do this. Let me give you an example of the level of success we've had. Outside of those private schools, the success is absolutely horrible. And we're spending like double the amount on these kids as we do on a typical Gen A kid. So Evelyn and I, instead of going in and taking weeks or months to train teachers, we can go in and show them how to do it in a day. And if parents, the one case of in my case that I'm using in the book, her name is Kimberly. She's a homeschooling mom with a little bit of college. She's very religious, taught four of her five kids to read beyond amazing with normal methods.
Mm.
But her fifth grade son, Reed, who was 10 years old at the time, she just spent $700 in December of 2024. I'm sorry, December of 2024, getting him tested. He was by the state of Ohio. He was reading at the 11th percentile and writing at the fourth. I worked with her for half an hour a week. For the next 8 months. She worked with him for an hour and a half a week for the next 8 months. Most parents do 10 to 15-minute sessions. Then over that summer of 25, Reed's friends came to him and said they wanted him in school to be with them socially. So he was tested beginning of August, called 8.5 months later in a public school. Now, if Kimberly doubled what he did, he would still be placed in special ed on Happy Kid. That didn't happen. His reading went up to the 64th percentile. His writing went up to the 65th. His grammar went up to the 97th. As of April 2026, he's in mainstream classes getting A's and B's.
Hmm.
Kimberly did what every parent dreams of. She's a parent. She's not a trained educator. When Evelyn did something in less time, her kid jumped 6.6 grade levels. All right. And we can teach this literally to trained teachers in a day. I've been teaching this to New York City public school teachers for the past 12 years at the Everyone Reading Conference. So if you look at the economics, they're night and day.
Yeah, that seems like, I mean, every school district in the country is wrestling, ghastly budget issues. I would think that and just state governments, right, more broadly,
Mhm.
would be wide open to something that works and is way cheaper.
Yes, but here's what we're running into. Schools are not hard on the neurodiverse, but let's just again go back to the science. Most of their stuff is for students trained with brains like this. So
Hmm.
that, with the massive activity in the back part of the brain. So I want you to think back to your education. If you did two things, if you set up your study time properly, you studied efficiently, you gave yourself enough time. And then number two, you worked really freaking hard. You did either well to freaking amazing, somewhere in between there. Every time you stop doing one of those two things, it went off the cliff. You start doing them again, you start doing great. Sound familiar?
Well, in my case, and I went through the Berkeley School District, and it was a little too easy to coast. And I was kind of the classic bored smart kid, I guess I'd say.
Hmm.
And so in high school, I took classes like my world history requirement was eh, taken with these classes that were called things like cultural experience, where the professor would just sort of, not professor, the teacher would just sort of blather on about his view of the events of the day. I mean, you learn shit. And so my education really happened, which almost completely outside of the school district. A couple of exceptions: an amazing math teacher, an amazing English teacher who really taught me how to write. A few little exceptions like that. But so I'm not. I'm a terrible example for the children of
Okay.
America because with my attitude, my limited education, and my bad attitude toward it, and then being successful.
Well, let's just take, for example, if you went back to a college class in the fall,
Mhm.
okay, at a top school, and you went in there and you planned out your study habits appropriately, and then you worked really hard,
Yeah,
you're going
I
to
would.
do well.
I think I would do well. Yes.
Okay. Now, for a dyslexic, you could have that same kid. Let's say they're coming out and their friends, they're both going to, let's say, Berkeley. The dyslexic says, I'm just going to take History 101. The other kid's taking like 6 classes. And they said, I'm going to outstudy you 5-1, 6-1, 7-1. The dyslectic's probably still going to do really bad in comparison because a lot of this stuff is at the beginning is this back part of the brain and we got nothing going on. Now you get us into grad school in our speciality, we rule the place.
Mm.
A lot of dyslexic professors said the day they entered grad school, day one, they're top of their class day one because they're asked, can you contribute knowledge to the field? And they can. A lot of gen eds, they get in there, they could remember and pass any test, but you ask them to come up with something original.
This is interesting to me because it sounds like you're saying that dyslexia is largely a matter of attention. So something that is really interesting, compelling
Mhm.
to a dyslexic, they all of a sudden basically become not dyslexic. And is that fair? Or am I
Oh
overstating it?
yeah, and actually, I can actually that's exactly what it is. I remember I said you have to be in that speciality while we're going
Yeah.
through the intervention period. But I can actually, if you want, I could probably have a decent shot of turning you dyslexic for a moment.
Yeah, I know that.
N-
No, thank you. It's interesting. I was thinking about my older. I was thinking about my older son, who is he is
Mhm.
he's about to turn 30, and he's really, really smart. And he really, really hated school. He's definitely not dyslexic because he has been amazing at reading and writing were kind of his thing. But
Mhm.
math was a little more of a challenge for him. But it's absolutely the case. I mean, the things when he is interested in something, and he's interested in a lot of things. He is incredible in what he will, what he can learn and produce. Whereas my younger son is much more of he just kind of fits more of the mold of a perfect student. He's like, oh, this is the shit you want me to do. Well, I'll just do that shit, and he was good at doing it, right?
Mhm.
So it's that attention thing is interesting to me. I think my older boy is probably well, he was diagnosed with ADHD, so
Mhm.
but he certainly isn't dyslexic, but he has that same trait of that if something he's interested in, boy, get out of the way. This guy's gonna, he's a house of fire. And if it's something he's not interested in, there's not a bat big enough in the world to get him to do it.
So do you want me to explain the difference between the two?
Between ADHD and
It, it,
dyslexia, yeah.
and just yeah, it's two questions. So if you were to ask your older son, in his speciality, in his area of extreme interest and ability, does he have ideas flying around his head at light speed, but with little to no organization? He
I don't
will
need
say
to ask him that
yes.
question. I know the answer. Yeah, I don't need to ask him
Yes.
that
Okay.
question.
But when you're asking him to do evolved reading and writing, okay, that doesn't affect. So how do I tell if you're dyslexic? I'll say, in your speciality, fingers, keyboard. The idea's in your head. You take your fingers, put it on the keyboard. Does
Yeah,
it then fly out of your head, leaving you with an empty brain? And the
yeah,
dyslexic will say yes, and the ADHD kid will say no.
yeah.
So that is where the similarities are extremely are there. But what it is with ADHD, even more than dyslexia, is if you're outside that speciality, you're done. I mean, you must have had shouting matches of him going through high school because he just didn't want to do anything he didn't want to do. And how far did he go in his education?
He actually tried college. He did one
Mhm.
semester and then said, no, this is not for me.
I'm not doing the gen ed nonsense. If he got into grad school for what he does, I
Yeah.
can tell you what would happen. He would freaking dominate it. All right. And I have
Yeah.
seen some of my students who got upset with the professor for having them indicate, well, you're dyslexic, you're not too smart, where they would literally make the professors cry by dominating them.
Hmm.
These are newer professors, but I've had that.
Yeah.
So the difference between dyslexic and ADD and ADHD is ADD, ADHD simply, if they have a reading and writing issue, it's mild, but a bunch of them have zero reading and writing issues. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of us focusing on things. I'm helping one client now, and he wants to get into sports management. Okay. And he is willing to go through all sorts of hell. I'm doing customized Harvard case study sort of things for him. And he will sit down and he will spend forever on this. And he's brilliant at it. We step outside of that.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting. That it's interesting. That's well, just to zoom back up for one more second. The thinking about this arc of how the not just the treatment, but how the social norms, how much of a problem is it still that people, because I think when I was a kid, and I know at least one of my friends who has a kid who's now in their 30s, when they went through school, there really was this kind of not not overt, but kind of an implied connection between dyslexia and stupidity, right? That there was just this
Yes.
limited intellect. And so, but
Oh, yeah. We are.
I feel like that has changed, right? So how have the social norms helped you in doing what you're doing, and how has what you're doing helped change those social norms?
Oh, it hasn't really changed. They're just politer about it. But
Mm,
again, if you want it, again, we just go back to the science. This is what school is based on, and I got nothing back there. So,
yeah.
how I try to describe what it's like, when you say we will accommodate you, it's nonsense. What's the sport that I suck at is basketball. What sport do you suck at?
Most of them,
But
but
just pick
I would
one that
say
you
how
really
about,
suck at.
I'd say distance running.
Okay, so let's say we get you the best distance running coach in the world,
Mm.
and we're going to get you the best running shoes in the world for 6 months. And then we're going to take a former Division I athlete at your age level, and we're going to give him shoes that belong, used Walmart shoes that belong in the dumpster. Is it going to make any difference?
No, and I actually know that guy. He's a friend of mine. I cycle with him all the time. He was one of 3,500 people to break the 4 minute mile, and yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
could you could give him cement shoes and he would still beat me.
Right. Okay. Because your body was not designed to be a runner. Our
No,
brains were not designed to do kindergarten through the first 2 years of college.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We're at a severe deficit, but I can tell you when we get into grad school, or sometimes if you really push us in our majors, we are, it is such an unfair advantage, extremely unfair.
that's a great
Okay.
analogy. Actually, Max Tegmark, who's a really brilliant Swedish physicist, he's been at MIT for years. He once said that this whole idea of he's IQ is just ridiculous. He says, think about if there was AQ. If somebody had, this, you had this athletic quotient, right? Well, nobody
Mhm.
thinks that somebody who's a great athlete, say a basketball player, could also be a jockey. That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah, that's
And
not
yet,
going to happen.
and yet, it's kind of the same with intelligence. There are all kinds of
Mhm.
different kinds of intelligence, and was people good. My wife famously once, when I was stupid enough to suggest that maybe I was smarter than her, she said there are different kinds of intelligence, which was a very polite way of telling me I was being really stupid. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
point is that you're pointing out that there are different kinds of intelligence, different places where we excel, and this idea that there's a number that represents intelligence is ridiculous, just as ridiculous as it would be if you did it for athleticism.
Well, if you were again, but I'm being very specific. Like, let me like when I was in that second day of law class, and the professor called on me. He was a professor longer than I was alive at the time. He called on me. Normally, what they do is they just knock you out, ask you questions you can't answer until you eventually adapt. I went back and then I started attacking him, which he found amusing. He kept attacking me. I kept attacking him. And we both we all knew where each of us were going in the future. We all know what the steps were. I just developed all that in a fraction of a second.
Yeah. I
Nobody
feel a
even
little
heard
bad
of
for the other
anything like
students
that.
in the class, but
Oh, the professor loved it. I mean, I
yeah,
can
he
tell you,
did.
but when I had to go and connect my research to a senior professor's, people said it was going to take years. I did it in under 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing those
Mm.
connections and putting those together, that's what dyslexics do at an evolved level, because like what your son's interested in, he's been focused on that since he was like 4 or 5. And that has built up over time to such an extent that if he went on to a grad program, it is so profoundly unfair.
Yeah, it's interesting. I can totally imagine that. I always sort of imagine that there was some liberal arts college somewhere where he could just totally focus on the writing and stuff he wanted to research, and that would work for him.
Mhm.
Well, listen,
Oh, it would work
Russell,
brilliantly.
the
Mhm.
before I let you go, I want you to take a minute to tell where people can find out more about your work and what you're doing, and if there are parents out there who are interested in finding out more about your method, where should they go?
Best thing to do is just go to dyslexiaclasses.com.
Hmm.
It's with an S, dyslexiaclasses.com. You can click on a button there that says download free guide, answer 3 questions, set up a time to speak with me, or you can find us on a learning platform called School, SKOOL.com, and just
Okay,
type in
SKU.
dyslexia classes, and we show parents how to work with their kids and get it done so you can do it affordably and at your own pace.
Fantastic. Well, listen, I really want to thank you for taking the time today. This is a really interesting conversation. And
The feast of
once again,
reasons
thank
and
you
the
for being on
flow
Feast of
of
Reasons.
soul.
Thanks for having me.